Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn about plant conservation using biotechnology method by Black Eagles production. Why plant conservation is important. Biodiversity is being lost at an unprecedented rate. Humankind has affected our planet in many ways. In the past few centuries, the changes in society and the increasing pace of development mean that the scale of these impacts have catastrophically grown. Global concern about the loss of valuable genetic resources stimulated many new programs for the conservation, protection and management of natural resources and wildlife. Conservation of biodiversity means protection of valuable natural resources for future generations as well as well-being of ecosystem. We all need plants. People around the world are recognizing just how important both wild and cultivated plants are to human survival and development. Conservation action takes many forms, from education, research and seed banking activities, to natural area management and restoration. But why is it so vital to conserve plants? The natural processes of plants protect our planet and supply the air we breathe and the water we drink. Humankind has many major problems to tackle, so it can be hard to see why we should care about thousands of species are going extinct. The origins of conservation were rooted in a general concern to protect nature because of its intrinsic and aesthetic values. However, although it is still important, in recent decades it has become apparent that we should conserve the natural world for reasons of enlightened self-interest, for the continued survival and well-being of humankind. Major threats to plant diversity. Habitat loss and degradation are the leading threats. Introductions of alien species. Some of the worst include cats and rats, green crabs, zebra mussels, the African tulip tree and the brown tree snake. Introductions of alien species can happen deliberately or unintentionally, for example, by organisms hitchhiking in containers, ships, cars or soil. Overexploitation. Resource extraction, hunting, and fishing for food, pets, and medicine threatens many species. Pollution and disease. Climate change induced by humans is increasingly recognized as one of the most serious threats. Climate change has many effects, from altering migratory species patterns to causing coral bleaching. One of the traditional method of conserving plant is by in situ method. In situ method is the on-site conservation or the conservation of genetic resources in natural populations of plant species. There are three types of in situ techniques. First is the genetic reserve, followed by on-farm and home garden. The examples of locations in situ conservation is carried out at protected areas, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries and bioreserves. Ex situ conservation is a process of protecting endangered species of plants by removing part of the population from a threatened habitat. There are two ways of ex situ conservation, which is the conventional method and the biotechnology method. An example of biotechnology method is the in situ conservation. In situ conservation is used for vegetative propagated material species with recalcitrant seed and material biology. Examples of materials stored in vitro are protoplast, isolated cells grown in suspension and meristem cultures at various stages of development. The steps in establishing an in vitro conservation are culture initiation followed by maintenance and multiplications and lastly long-term storage or preservations. For the culture initiation, the success of conservation depends on the quality of the explants. The selected plant's fragments are then initiated into tissue culture via sterilization. In the maintenance and multiplication step, the selection of growth regulators, mineral salts and supplements are important to obtain a viable tissue culture. There are two types of storage, which are the medium-term storage using artificial seed production and long-term storage using cryopreservation. For the artificial method, seeds are produced by encapsulating a plant propagule in a matrix, which will allow it to grow into a plant, whereas in cryopreservation, the germplasm is stored at a temperature close to 196 oC using liquid nitrogen to minimize the risk of gene alterations by blocking all of the metabolic activities. Sustainability of plant conservation. Sustainability is seen as a guiding principle for development, and means that all aspects of development should be able to be maintained for future generations. As these aspects are all interlinked, unsustainable development of any one aspect will affect the other aspects. So, for example, overlogging of a forest means not only will the forest be much degraded and diminished, but that the next generation will be unable to gain as much benefit from its goods and services. There will be very little more timber to harvest, and forest may be unable to protect the watershed. The present situation. Unfortunately, although ecosystems are vital for human life on Earth, most have been seriously degraded or used unsustainably, and the distribution of species across the world is becoming more homogeneous as the diversity of plants and animals is reduced and alien species become invasive. The degradation of ecosystems needs to be reversed through changes in policy and practice if they are to meet the coming decades' increasing demand for food, drinking water, timber and fiber. Sustainability, a theme in policies. Biodiversity contributes to poverty reduction by improving the nutrition and health of the poorest people in the world, generating incomes and stabilizing ecosystems services, for example generation of water, cycling of nutrients, prevention of erosion, on which the people depend. For wealthy nations, sustainable development also depends on the conservation and management of ecosystems, which supply essential services and exploring ways to increase production, for example food, fiber and other minor crops, while using renewable and non-polluting sources of energy and other resources. The role of botanic gardens. Sustainable development. The sustainable use of biodiversity to benefit and safeguard human well-being. The regulation of the unsustainable exploitation of biodiversity due to international trade. Sustainable tourism. The provision of models of sustainable practice.